Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast. It's a weekly podcast and this is episode 52. And it's a what's it about though?
But I don't know.
What was the elevator pitch?
I don't know. You were making one up when we were walking up the hill.
No, it's about meaning. Like, I think this is what's coming clear to me. It's a search for meaning every week, starting pedagogically from grand subjects and hopefully nailing down. I like the pedagogy thing.
You like
it? It's an awkward...
It's an awkward word to say. Nobody ever says it.
No one says it in real life.
Who isn't a pedagogy person.
But it's like we just enumerate things. This sounds awful. Anyway, I'm Michael Forrest. I'm the one you don't like.
Michael is the needy one.
I'm very needy. And what's your name?
My name's Ivanka Magic.
And what are we talking about this week?
Meaning. More meaning. Again.
It's post-meaning, and I'm going to go back and rename Meaning Episode 1 Meaning Pre-Conference, and this one's going to be Meaning Post-Conference. So we thought about what meaning means last week, and this week we're probably just going to talk about what we saw at meaning and if we had any ideas or inspiration or, what came across. Do you see anyone? Who were the sort of like highlights for you?
I enjoyed Andrew Sims. The Stop the Apocalypse dude. Is that you going for the brochure? He's the one,
Who's the positive? He was like, you can do a lot.
There's a lot we can do, and we humans, we can change, we can do things very quickly when we need to, and I think his point was that we need to.
Yeah.
And if we could all get around when that Icelandic volcano exploded, then we can deal with not flying as much for climate change.
Okay, well, that was a good one. I mean, it's a good argument.
He also liked his explosive nature of delivering.
It's also a good argument for putting it off till the last minute. We'll sort it out at the last minute. Yeah. Although it is the last minute.
That's the point, I think. No one seems to be getting. It is the last minute.
It's yes. I quite liked the Fairphone talk.
Oh yes, that was very good.
I've been putting a lot of energy. The thing I'm enjoying at the moment is making little music hardware, gadgets, systems. And I was thinking, well, what if I could do something ethical around that? Because I think the musicians would like that as well. Like repairable hardware, I think would be a really nice niche to
go back to.
Because if there's one thing I kind of realised after last week's recording, it's like meaning is so fragmented and so different for everyone. I should just kind of just do what I'm most interested in and make it ethical and try and do a kind of positive job of it. But also at the same time, I will. We sat down with that guy. He said, and I'd sort of said an idea, and he said, "Well, yeah, if you did that, that would solve all of the problems in the world." And I was like, well, "Yeah, that's the idea, isn't it?"
That's the plan.
So let's get on with solving all of the problems in the world, shall we?
Yes.
But first, I mean, it's funny, how was your week? Because we've sort of seen each other. How are you feeling post-conf?
I haven't really had time to digest properly, I think. I was kind of looking forward to recording today so that I can digest. So I might be more rambly and ummy and ahry than usual.
You have been very much not quite present and dealing with a lot of different things, I've noticed this morning.
Like trying to get to a thing. It has been a good week. I'm still enjoying my project. I had to do quite a lot of analysis this week of my qualitative data, and but there's a lot of data in my project, so I'm not done yet. I'm doing some more interviews next week, and that's it really. That's my week. I was building up to blocking everything out so that I could go to meaning for the day and actually be present and listen and be able to put my phone in airplane mode and just switch it on occasionally. So I did enjoy that. I did have to, on the way home, buy some fabric pens so I could make my child a spotty T-shirt to wear to nursery because it's children in need. And we spent a lot of time drawing spots on this T-shirt for her this morning to go, I will not wear my spotty T-shirt. So
she was involved in drawing these spots.
She was involved. That's what she
was happy with the result.
She was happy with the result.
So what happened
this morning? She wanted to wear a particular cardigan, and I told her that cardigan was dirty and that she needed to wear spots because it was children in need and everyone was going to be wearing spots. And so she lifted the label in the cardigan and said, "Mummy, shall I tell you what it says here? It says, I will not wear my spotty T-shirt. So she didn't wear it.
Do you think
she wore the dirty cardigan.
But what could have happened between last night and this morning? Just a dream, a portent of doom.
She just wasn't into it.
Or are children just not very consistent?
I don't think it's that. She wasn't particularly. She never said, in her defence, at no point did she say she was actually going to wear the spotty T-shirt.
So she was just thought it was an activity.
She was just like, this is what we're doing. We're creating a spotty T-shirt for tomorrow. At no point was there any commitment or promise that she would be wearing it. Telling you this story reminds me of something that after listening to last week's episode, at one point, you asked a question that sort of implied that having a child should add meaning to my life.
Well, yeah,
or
we
in
didn't
some
even cover
way,
that.
we didn't even cover that. But actually, I don't think it's fair to expect a child to add meaning to your life. There's that Persian poet, Rumi. Your children are arrows that you set forth into the world. You don't have ownership of them. You don't. So in a way, I don't think having a child, it may give you meaning in a moment to be helping somebody else, but I don't think it's up to her to in any way add meaning to my life.
Well, I was listening to Adam Buxton talking to Louis Theroux this morning, and one way he put it was that, you get sort of every day you just kind of get caught up in day-to-day stuff, admin stuff. But then, if at some point the little daughter just says something funny, that's the thing you remember about that day, and it'll kind of like make sense. And so I think on that level, I mean, you're not asking them to give you the meaning, but the fact that they're there makes each day kind of not just a complete blur of blandness, maybe.
I think it's possibly more purpose than meaning, because it's like, when you're making these decisions about, earning money and buying things and saving the world and caring about the world, the literal responsibility for another human. But then we can have all these conversations as well about, for a long time, I was not one of Britain's hard-working families. I was a family of one. And sometimes it's quite irksome that somehow, the people with children or families with some way more specialer.
Oh, I've got a pushchair. Get out of the way. I'll get a special bit on the bus.
We've discussed this one. You have to help mothers with pushchairs.
I'm not. They can lift their own pushchairs.
No, they can't. You need to help them. But they can, of course they can. But there's a difference.
I ride my bike around, so it rarely comes to that.
Good.
Well, I did sit on the guilt seat on the train yesterday, so without realising.
The legroom
priority seat. Sorry.
As long as you're willing to give it up to somebody who...
No, I'm not. Are you going to ask me about my week then?
No.
Okay.
So, Michael, my needy friend, how was your week?
How dare you? So I'm down in Brighton for this conference. I stayed in a hotel last night. We are recording this episode with an engineer in a room, in an actual studio. I'm not the one having to... Well, I'll still edit it and everything, but, so it's very exciting. Next level of production values, hopefully.
Nobody's going to care.
No one's going to notice because it's already so flawless. So, yeah, I've been down here walking around Brighton going, right, every single person here has a Keep cup. So really you're pretty mainstream with all your Keep cup stuff.
Yeah, I'm not
Most
special.
of the things you talk about... It's just you conforming to Brighton.
I'd like to think of myself as an early adopter within this pool.
Okay.
And I'd like to think of myself living in a city that reflects my values, which is one of the reasons it makes it a very difficult city to leave for me. However, even in this city of Keep cups, there is still, we've talked about the exclusion.
Oh, no, well, I've definitely seen there's a very, very present homelessness and, rough sleeping
contingent.
I wondered if there was, and then I sort of see people being nice to people sitting down there as well, and kind of going, maybe it's quite a nice place to be homeless by many standards. I don't know. Do people come here, or is it people from here?
No, I did ask one of my research projects was in social care. So I did ask one of the people that runs a centre, and they was like, yeah, there is a sort of a season, but it's not explicit. It might be access. As part of my recent Welcome research, I interviewed a professor whose whole reason for being is tackling homelessness. It is so vastly complex. Yeah. That's one of, it's very hard to... But Brighton isn't a very good place. We haven't got facilities. Right. We've got, in our city, we've got rough sleepers who have jobs.
Right.
there's literally going to a gym to shower in the morning, having slept on the street, to go, we've got couch surfers. It's really expensive.
It's quite expensive
It
here,
is.
isn't
It
it?
is. Rent is really expensive. Deposits are really expensive. So, for example, if you've had and there is this trend of agents and people keeping people's deposits. So if let's say your rent is $450 a month and the deposit you had to collect was $800 or $750 because they want, a month and a half. $750 is not. I can't do maths today. Say your landlord keeps that or keeps part of it. You've not just got to save back up the deposit. You've also got to save up the first month's rent on a minimum wage job or a 0 hours contract. You've got no home.
This housing thing.
The housing thing is not cool.
No.
Not at all.
I wanted to just something, this is actually going back a couple of episodes, but the people episode, we kind of had a bit of a euphoric sort of like meaning if we could just all get on the same team and have empathy for each other. And if people could just see each other and understand each other, then we'd all get along. I heard this put a different way, and it's Roger Daltrey again, I think, but like you also, in a pre-social media world, if you said something twatty to someone's face, you run the risk of getting punched in the face. Like, you run the risk of getting hurt. Violence is another aspect of this sort of social control. We're not all just angels walking around, and if we just understood each other. Like, online is very safe. And there are no consequences in the same way to behaving in objectionable, poisonous ways. So, yeah, there has to be a pull. But also, like, again, it's that weird thing of progress. In a way, it's nice that we all are safer in a lot of our lives to express ourselves than we've ever been before. And that helps to kind of free certain people that have never had a voice before. But, the dark side of that is that, you do get, alt-right growing, and you do get all these horrible phenomena coming out of it. And then that can manifest online in bans and the threat of bans. There's all this kind of thing, but
it's not the same.
So,
it's not the same. Fear of actual physical pain. That's one of the reasons we're careful when we walk around. Fear of physical injury is a good fear.
Yeah, but also it's one that people have even more overblown in the real world than ever before as well. So I think people kind of see this kind of real world as this terrifying place full of terrorists that will attack you from every direction, whereas like online they're just kind of like running around doing whatever,
Being mentalist. Well, I mean, I don't know if you saw the stats. There's something like, I'm going to say 100 selfie deaths a year.
Oh my God.
People being somewhere and taking a selfie and falling off a cliff.
100.
Something, it's some number that is more than one or two.
Okay.
It's significant. It's not thousands.
Don't forget which world you're in.
It's not sorting out sort of the world overpopulation, but it is a new reason, new way of dying that humans have found. And you have to laugh, but I think that is a symptom of this idea that you can sort of control Z undo things. It's like, I can be an idiot here because surely they would have put a fence up here if it was actually dangerous. And it's like a little bit of not thinking for yourself. Both in terms of what's going to happen to you and playing out the consequences. But it's I don't really need to get punched in the face to know that walking up to somebody in the street and calling them a
you just need
bastard.
to see their eyebrows twitch, and you're like, oh, sorry. But that's the one of the reasons that I kind of have to live in London or somewhere like that, because when I was 20, 21, kind of coming down to London as a grown up for the first time, and just sort of being on the Central Line, and there's no barrier, the train just comes. Just don't get in the way of, it was like, it's up to you to be a grown-up and not get in the way of the very dangerous thing. It's not fenced off. It's not like, Come on, people. We're not that stupid. We have quite...
We are. I'm I'm going to start with two things. One is that Meaning is a business conference.
Yeah, it's just not really quite branded as that, is it?
No.
It sort of feels like a bit fluffier than that, but it is a business conference and it is all businesses talking about.
It is all about business, but it's talking about business in a slightly different way. The other thing that I wrote down quite early in the day, normally Meaning is so the last two I've been to, there haven't been any talks about meaning. They haven't been that meta.
Yeah, well, I mean, we tried that.
But the other thing is that meaning, it's not a permanent thing. There is the concept of what gives you meaning today.
For me, that question kind of keyed straight. It's sort of almost like the happiness app kind of thinking. It's like, well, don't try and think about how happy you are in general, just like right now. And maybe I think meaning is a thing like that. I hadn't really thought of it like that. Is it fair to say that maybe it's a business conference where money isn't the only metric?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they're saying you shouldn't make money. That doesn't mean that they don't think you're going to make a profit. It's just that you can do that. Well, I don't know. Do you think it's like more difficult?
I think, what do you mean? More difficult to do business?
To think about both money and ecological
impact. I
I
think there's an interesting thing, like we also like really, really engaged people went along to an event this morning to follow up. And one of the things that one of the women we were talking to was, she was talking about 21st century business, which is definitely a thing that's come from Kate Raworth and the donut economics country, land. But this idea that to be a 21st century business, you cannot simply chase the dollar. You have got to do more than that. And maybe it is harder. So I went to this talk that you didn't go to, which was the first time I've gone off-piste and looked at some of the other streams. But I saw this talk on conscious capitalism, which is a thing, and there is a book, and it isn't. But the guys that started it are the person that started Whole Foods, Patagonia, companies like that have some sort of purpose above and beyond making money. But they are definitely profitable businesses, no doubt. And one of the things he talked about was this idea that if you haven't got a solution that's good for the company and the world, you need to go back and think a bit harder, because you've not done enough thinking yet. You need to be more creative.
It is harder.
It is harder, but the rewards are greater.
You think so?
Well, I think so. I mean, the rewards are greater for the, if you're...
Whole Foods is pretty expensive.
It's very expensive, yes. One of the things that came up yesterday in Chakraborty, one of the things I wrote down when he was talking is my meaning is superior to yours. And he talked about that as being one of the things that has caused the country to collapse in terms of the Brexit vote. It was like this idea that because my valuing of something is somehow more valuable than your valuing of something, which is the same things we were talking about the other day about handbags. So one of the things he was talking about with a lot of the projects, there are a lot of grassroots hopeful projects going on in the country at the moment. One of the places that they occur is where it is a thickly neighbourhooded area. So people actually caring about the people who live next door to them. So he gave the example of the dinner ladies in Oldham feeding the kids locally sourced organic foods and forcing the food supply chain to change. Preston Council, they only buy local, basically, was the implication. And so they're changing their local economy.
And this was a guy that's been around lots of places in the country. He's been to sort of like the heart of Wales and been to all these different places, talked to people face to face. He was one of two people that brought up this thing of make hope possible rather than despair convincing. His anecdotes about Amazon and the nihilism of the Leave voters, the fact that feels surplus to requirements. This sort of sense that you are just not needed, you're not important, you're not represented. They're kind of screwed either way, so they don't really care what happens. So the sort of Leave vote being just, okay, well, screw you, like, you can't ignore us, is fair. But yeah, that idea of just total nihilism I found pretty heartbreaking. And Amazon, that anecdote of people like peeing in bottles because they're scared to leave the conveyor belt or whatever in the Amazon place. And before that talk, I was like, Amazon, whatever. And now I'm like, maybe I am anti-Amazon now, which is...
Yeah. more broadly what he was talking about, and I think that's the overall theme and why Meaning is a business conference, because it presents you with models and ideas of creating governance and decision making that help you think about more than what the shareholders want. That is the point of pretty much every talk.
Yeah.
It's not about the shareholders. It's not about the people profiting. People do and can profit, because the guy that did the conscious capitalism talk was like, I am a capitalist. And I was like, well, you're in the wrong place. No. But he's like, you're in the wrong town, sunshine. But Chakraborty gave quotable figures, like the fact that, the government has subsidised Amazon to the tune of 16 million to sort of woo them to starting these packing plants in Stroud and Fife. And they've actually had to pay them to encourage them. And then they come over here, give people shit jobs, and then don't pay their taxes. So we gave them some money to bring their business over here. And then they thanked us by giving people unsustainable jobs that kind of create in-work poverty. That means the welfare state needs to step in to make up the difference. And we give them money to seduce them to come and open these places here. And then what are we getting out of it? Nothing. So he was talking, and I think very rightly so, about creating things like, yeah, sure, please do come over and start your business here. But as a minimum, everyone needs a proper contract with paid holidays, with defined breaks, with pension schemes, with all the things that they need to live their lives. One of the inspiring, I think, stories I heard at the cooperatives meetup that I went to the evening before was finding out about Suma Foods, who pay everybody. They're a cooperative now that has 200 people working for them. And everybody earns the same money, except truck drivers, I think, who you have to be, and they rotate jobs, but truck drivers are special because you have to A, know how to drive a truck, and B, your lifestyle has to support you driving a truck.
I like the idea that the person that knows how to do something gets paid more rather than the person that thought of it. or just started it. But I'm talking about how sort of this town had become very affluent because everyone was getting paid well.
Yeah, the word was she. The town, I think it's Yorkshire, it's become sort of she because everyone's actually earning 40, if something, and the number is something like 45 grand a year. If you work there, everyone's getting the same money. So actually you've got quite a lot of families that are doing very well, thank you very much, out of one company.
And imagine if you had a company, you didn't have to make special private members clubs and that felt nice to sort of keep yourself away from all the poor. Imagine if everywhere could just be nice.
Exactly. I think that's the thing.
It's the argument for doing this.
I think rather than maybe making it about having to think about other things, maybe thinking about the cost in different terms. Yes, you can have an extra 10%, but who is paying for that extra 10%? Is it the workers? Is it the planet? Is it... And the conscious capitalism guy, Timothy Henry, he put up these numbers and it was something phenomenal. Workers' salaries have gone up by 10% in the last 10 years. CEOs' salaries have gone up by 937%. It's just ridiculous. It's like, okay, but who's paying for your increase? Because the shareholders don't want to pay for your increase. But so it's the workers and the planet and sustainability and all those kind of things that are paying for those numbers.
Do you think that's just people can do that because they don't have to... Is this just openly happening? Like, do you think people? Because is this like always behind closed doors? It's like, well, no one knows how much they're getting paid, so we'll just give ourselves this, or is it? It's like people just expect that they should be getting paid this much.
I don't know how it's grown. I think it's a bit. Who gave the example of bringing the unions into a conversation about changing the company structure? Somebody was talking about, talk about the unions as a stakeholder. Changes, they are an equal stakeholder in this.
Well, they're workers. That's the point of the unions.
And then he quoted somebody that's saying that in the past 4 decades, capitalism was slowly committing suicide. Because, he starts off the thing with capitalism has given us all these things. It's given us aeroplanes and mobile phones and lives changed, everyone can fly everywhere, blah, blah. But it's also given us it's given us a bunch of problems that we need to... But I've never thought about myself as a... particularly capitalist or not capitalist. That's not really ever been language that I've particularly engaged with. But he did talk about the profit maximisation fallacy when we talked about
the profit maximisation fallacy. I also had that Amazon are using cheap workers and not robots. It's not automation that's taking over.
That graph that I found really interesting was how low Britain is on the use of automation.
Yeah.
And in the Conscious Capitalism talk, automation came up. One of the questions was, how can we think more carefully and creatively about coming up with these more complex solutions when we don't have time because we're doing work? And I think the bit that everyone is underestimating and overlooking when it comes to automation, which I know you don't, and possibly I don't, is this thing that having a really good little bit of software that helps the computers do the things that the computers are good at saves a lot of time and gives you more time to use your brain for things that humans are really good
more
at.
Meaningful.
More meaningful effort. It's like loads of innovation in health and social care and all these kinds. Everyone's looking at how can I replace the face-to-face communication with an iPad or a thing. It's actually, let's not worry about, people who are in need human touch. Let's not fiddle with that. Let's go over here where everyone's adding up and counting stuff, and for the sake of yet another report on efficiency, let's get the
pasting is some people's job all day.
Literally copy pasting. Let's replace all the copy pasting jobs with automation so that the humans can sit there and hold somebody's hand and talk them through a difficult moment.
That's what it should be.
So I think the fact that the UK is so behind on automation is actually quite terrifying.
But I saw Tim Cook talking about just how China is so much further ahead in automation than everywhere else, and actually to find a good tooling engineer in the US is almost impossible. Whereas that's a whole profession and a widely they have all these, and this is a slightly different subject, but actually that automation skill is China's doing it really well, those places, but we haven't got it in the UK, and the US doesn't have it either. It's not automation, apparently.
Well, actually, it's cheaper. That's the point you were making. It's cheaper to use humans and pay them badly and treat them badly than it is to invest in automation.
And that is a problem of the system, of the state, of the priorities of the government.
And I think
the people who vote as well.
One of the phrases he used was bogus democracy. It's a democracy where not everyone's represented, and we're not, they're not engaging. What did he call him? Gary Meek from Wales. He's he just wants to smash it up, and create. He wants a revolution. thing that was perhaps missing from everybody else's, only Andrew Sims had it, was this fiery urgency.
Yeah.
Like he had this, the UN report has come out. We've got 12 years, 5 by some estimates. Come on. Everything, the way he was talking, his delivery, everything was just quick fire. Let's fucking sort this out rather than let's talk about how nice we are.
But I did think that was a good point. Like we it's hard to care about the future because the present does have a nasty habit of grinding on. We're always just dealing with today. And if it's too big, if it's too different, if it's too much of a catastrophe, we've got no way of thinking about it. And we also know from experience that stuff doesn't really change that much in our present day lives, and which is something that the guy that I met, someone I liked that had voted Leave, said, like, oh, it's not really going to change though. Like, what's actually happened? I'm like, what was, even with all of this catastrophizing and here's the apocalypse, it's like people love an apocalypse story, and like there's the flip side of banging on about 12 years is it's probably going to be all right. Like we'll just be the present still, and we're always kind of scared of something.
He used this example of Green GB Week, that there's the first ever Green GB Week, and he talked about how that was the week that we signed off fracking, that we did something with HS2, gave the go ahead on the 3rd runway, blah blah. He gave specific examples of all these not green things that happened that week. Now, being as I'm somebody who signed a petition that says, demand the government declare a climate emergency, end fossil fuel use and build a community resilience. I signed that petition. Yeah. I've got my response. The government has responded. It says, climate change is one of the most urgent things that we are fully committed to. I'm not going to read it all out, but it's at home, that first annual Green GB Week. Yeah, I've heard about your Green GB Week and it's not that green. So it's kind of a PR exercise instead of real action.
Yeah, and so many things end up being this way, and this is the sort of where the cynicism kicks in with all of this meaning stuff. Is like, okay, but if we had that today, everyone's a bit sick of talking. And this is all a lot of talking, and our podcast is a lot of talking, and it's sort of like, okay, but when do we do something? When do we commit to something? But
I think the conference itself does give practical example. Every talk was a case study or a practical example. Here's what we did. Here's how we did it. Here's some models we use. Here's some tools we use. Here's some things that worked. Here's some things that don't. They were in that sense, they were practical. Very few people, if any, stood up. I don't think anyone I listened to just talked about something vacuous like a theory on something. And that's cool, full stop. And now there's and now what?
Well, for the attendees, we kind of want to make sure we do something. The person that I want to certainly email and get in touch with after seeing her talk was Amy Whittaker, who was talking about business and art. She coaches artists in business. Ooh. And the way she described what art is it's creating something that needs to change the world in order to accommodate it. So moving reality from point A to point B such that this thing can now exist. Wow. And also she talked about this artist that released a tin of shit, which she sold for the same price as gold. Well, so you want to be an artist, but also you're a citizen and also a business person, and how those, obviously it was a Venn diagram. And then just the difference between art and design being, art is asking a question, it's messy to answer. And whereas design is more about optimizing a solution. And just kind of gave some interesting stuff about process. Like something I don't really know the answer to is what's the question you're trying to answer? How much studio time are you going to give this? And, how long are you going to give yourself to answer this question? So it's something I'm going to try and have a think about.
Can I be the person asking the questions and you answer that you come up with the art? I quite liked Zayton guy at the end. Oh, yeah, very good. The Palestinian olive oil story.
Well, he was from East London. He'd gone over to Palestine to try and solve all the problems and bottle olive oil, and they were all like, who are you? What? And then he kept trying.
And then he's done it.
Yeah.
He's come up with something. He's done it well.
Yeah.
So, he was impressive.
Continually thinking that they couldn't do it.
And being quite comfortable talking about all the points of despair.
Yeah.
The thing that it made me think is that, A, I don't do enough. And maybe that's, we were talking about like, how to make an interesting podcast versus having a conversation. And it's like, maybe for me, part of coming to the end of a day like that is it actually, yes, it's inspiring stories, but it's also there is a low point of there is so much to be done. Am I doing enough? Should I be doing more? What can I do? All those kind of things that just make it a bit of like a...
Yeah, no, I mean, I started that low point early on in the day, and I was saying yesterday, I've got kind of meaning fatigue at the moment, talking about meaning, because I just kind of did a whole exercise in this searching for meaning, seeing what people value, and then yesterday even I met someone about here's a possibly meaningful. Well, the day before, sorry, like I was meeting some students about a whole thing, and I've just got like my brain is already too full of possibilities, and I was just tired. It is absolutely exhausting thinking about this stuff. The emotions aren't particularly positive when you feel like there's so much wrong with the world and you just want to do one thing. And my brain at the moment is just going, I'm just going to pick the smallest thing that I seem to be enjoying doing right now. Meaning to me this week is, can I make my phone connect to my modular synth? And then it's like, okay, well, maybe I can do that. Maybe that can be a product, but a repairable product. Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, you do need a little bit of a grace period to let the bigger ideas sort of, just to think it
germinate.
Through. But yeah, certainly, I think we're both at very much a point where it's like, here is an infinite sea of possibilities. Here is a depressingly diverse range of things that need to be solved.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? How's my life going to matter in all this?
Well, one of the questions that somebody asked in the session that I was in yesterday, he talked about the fact that the purpose and the culture has to be coming from the leadership. So one of the questions was that if the purpose that the leader has identified is very much around environmentalism, and then your personal thing that you feel most passionate about is equality and feminism. The question was, how do you persuade the leadership to align their purpose? How do you reconcile that? This woman asked, like, what if I really care about equality and the leader really cares about the environment and they've geared the company towards the environment? And his answer was, perhaps you should go and find a different company to work for. It's like, if you can't be the person that comes up with the Fairphone idea or can't be the person that comes up with the Palestinian olive oil, or you don't feel driven enough, then find somebody who has come up with a thing and then go and work for them. Instead of working for somebody, make those active choices. Is the sort of
vote with your feet, at least. No, yeah, like you've got to find. But there was another talk about how someone was saying like it doesn't really come from the leaders. Like the leaders can. Like if you ask someone what meaning their job has to them, it's very rarely, oh, well, the leader gave this really inspiring thing. It tends to come from the day to day.
It was more that it was not that it was going to come from the leader, but the leader sets, if you're Patagonia and you want to set a company that is an environmental company disguised as a clothing company, is I think how they describe themselves, then that direction gets set from the top for the person who comes up with the idea. But then if you go and work for them, there's no point trying to turn them into an equality company masquerading as a clothing company, because they've already chosen their thing. If your purposes don't match up, then
Yeah, and what we haven't touched on is the meaning versus purpose conversation, and that was Mario Lips-Biersma. I never quite understood what the differentiation was supposed to be, but she did say like that purpose top down can suppress bottom up meaning, and that also leaders can remove obstacles to meaning. But then I think that's a different sort of company to one where the founder has a very good idea of what the meaning of it all is. And to be honest, like how many companies have someone like that?
I don't know. I think when she was talking about purpose versus meaning, it's more like if you're a teacher or a nurse, your job has purpose. But teaching and nursing are notoriously stressful, and people actually don't have meaning in their day-to-day activity, because even though on the surface of it, you've got this big overarching purpose.
I've got to get this done.
You still have to address the day-to-day meaning for people, make it a nice job. Apparently she quoted New Zealand, on average, people stay in teaching for 5 years.
Right.
Which is nothing. She gave an example of...
She said it was meaning without purpose, and you end up with weird zealots.
Well, have you ever met an Amway salesperson in
No.
your life? So Amway is a pretty old school pyramid sales scheme.
Right.
They used to sell cleaning products, I think. One of my mum's school friends and her husband got into this, and they came to our house and did a presentation to try and recruit my mother. And they were like, it was like talking to born again Christians. They'd like the glazed over eye thing, they're not thinking. It was like,
robots.
You must come and sell Amway products because this will make the world a better place. And that's, I think, what she means. Because actually, end of the day, it was a pyramid scheme selling cleaning products. It was not going to make America great again, was the example. It was to save America by selling Amway. And that's the thing. It's like you get this kind of, we must all do this because it's going to be, and it just because people have got behind it and can be brainwashed into getting behind it, doesn't mean it actually...
Well, and people have such a need for meaning that whatever they're doing, they can find a way, if given the opportunity, to attach some meaning to some real nonsense.
But this is what we were talking about the other day about, like, you know, the alt-right gang and the you know, the rise of fascism and the chanting and all this kind of stuff. It's like meaning like you've got a purpose.
Yeah.
When actually it's not really it has no meaning. Your purpose has no meaning. I don't know.
I'm trying to connect that to the alt-right. Because they have it certainly has some meaning. And I think their purpose is just to burn everything, as far as I can tell.
Burn it down,
crazy.
break it, smash it up. Did you hear those people they called their child Adolf?
Oh my God.
They've got arrested, they've got sent to prison for hate speech. I think it's the United Kingdom.
Oh, okay.
Of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Well,
for now.
I thought the left believed in free speech.
Well, yes.
Yeah, no, that's the disingenuous cry of the alt-right nationalist person.
So Dudu starts Whole Foods is a vegan, but they are a grocery store, so they sell meat. And one day they are being picketed by PETA. Not Peter
that's whatever, animal rights.
PETA. Animal rights people are protesting. And so he walks over, finds the leader of the protest and says, let's have lunch and have a chat. Let's find a way that's acceptable to everybody. So what the Whole Foods guy working with, and he had a big thing about getting all the stakeholders around the table, and everybody's a stakeholder. You know, the farmers, the customers, and they're all equal stakeholders. The shareholders are stakeholders, but only one stakeholder. And he got them around the table and came up with like a transition scale. So if at the bottom level you get cheaper meat and you're buying meat that is, I don't know, they've been fed organic food, and then the second level up is so it goes up and up to attaining sort of
true veganism.
Well, you know, perfectly well loved animals that have lived a perfect life. But the consumer can make a conscious decision.
I say just let's do the Forest Green Rovers thing and make everyone just be a vegan. It's fine. Have you had those corn sausages are very good. Just force it on everyone. They get used to it.
I don't want.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is you accept, you know, how much of the world can't you change? And just seeing that Forest Green found that they could change something that you wouldn't really have expected anyone to attempt to change, and were successful in that. I just believe that sometimes you've got to take a hard line to make a difference, and because people can't really adapt to a soft line.
No.
Right? Like the plane stopping entirely makes people adapt. The plane stopping a little bit doesn't really force anyone to change any habits or behaviours.
The thing that I have always liked about the Fairphone model is that from the outset, it has never, ever claimed to be perfect.
So maybe it's the more complex a business is, the more moving parts it has, the harder it is to make a sort of hardline change.
So yeah, that was meaning.
That was, well, I mean, I think we've still got more to talk about with meaning, but next episode, still not quite sure if it's going to be more meaning or if it's going to be slightly different, because next episode is potentially season 2 as well.
Oh, yeah.
So thanks for listening. If you like the podcast, go to grandpodcast.com. Where can people find you?
At Ivanka on Twitter.
You can find me at michaelforestmusic.com. Because I did all the music. I'm just saying this every week because my aunt didn't know I did all the music. I wasn't sure. So I'm like, well, yeah, I did. All that music you're hearing, I made it all from scratch. But anyway, what else can people find and do?
People can write us reviews, tell their friends, subscribe, share, that sort of stuff. Somebody asked me this morning if I was a social media professional because I suggested that I use Twitter. Are you a social media professional? No. But I can tell you that if people share things on Twitter, we get more downloads. It's crazy.
Well, I started this morning, a new thing on Twitter, which is #conclusions. I thought I could start just distilling some of the conclusions we came to on different episodes. And then you can I'll link to the episode, and we can both do them, but it'll be linked back to the episode that we had it in, and you can hear the context and hear, how we got to there. So there you go, a bit of social media.
Good.
And yeah, so thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you very much for listening.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye. Bye.